And welcome into In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports. Hey there, I'm Aaron Cheslock. As we do each week, we talk with local coaches and athletes and walk their path to the particular point in their career, and just kind of find out how they're doing now and how they managed to reach the amount of heights that they have. And we certainly have an accomplished gentleman joining us here with the former Clemson star, former NBA standout, Trevor Booker. Trevor, first of all, thanks so much for taking some time with us. I know you've been away from pro ball for a couple years now. How's the adjustment been? Just watching the finals and all that. Do you get any juices flowing that you want to get back out there?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a competitor that played in the NBA, of course, even when you're old and wrinkly, you still have the urge, to want to get out there. But sometimes your body says no. So that's what my body is right now. But I'm still, having fun playing local leagues. I actually just got finished playing in the TBT tournament, the $1 million ESPN tournament. We lost in the first round, but I had a pretty good showing, and it was definitely fun to be back out there.
When you, I don't know how much you got to pay attention to the NBA finals, but for the casual sports fan, they were against it because there was no LeBron or KD or Steph in it. But for those diehard basketball fans, they were kind of amped up for it. And I think those that tuned in were rewarded with, a once in a generation talent like Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then this upstart Phoenix Suns team with Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and it was great basketball. I mean, there were a couple games in there that was as competitive a game as you'll see in any NBA finals. I'm curious your take on it and your take on Giannis getting over the hump, winning the NBA championship, and maybe what that says in the age of the super teams, that if you stick with one team, you can still get it done.
Yeah, honestly, for a basketball junkie like myself, I thought it was one of the best finals that I've ever seen. I know, people were upset it didn't have, Steph Curry or LeBron or huge name on both sides. But Giannis, he's as big as they come. He may be the best player in the NBA right now. Some people have him at the top of the list, especially with what he did in the playoffs. And on the other side, you had Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Book put on a show. Unfortunately for Chris, he came up a little short. I was actually, rooting for him. And I also have a good buddy, Torrey Craig, that's from the upstate, on the Phoenix Suns. But I also have a buddy that's on the Milwaukee Bucks that's from South Carolina, and Chris Middleton. So, either way, I was happy. But if you're a real true basketball, fan, those were the finals that you wanted to see. It was great basketball on both sides.
I'm curious. I'm gonna get to my list of questions here in a second, but I got to ask you, since you brought Torrey Craig up, he's in that unique position where he played that first 18 games of the season with the Bucks, traded to the Suns, and then ends up losing to the Bucks in the finals. If you're Torrey Craig, you're allowed to get an NBA championship ring, even though you lost in the NBA finals. If you were in that position, would you get the ring?
Definitely. I'm going to get that ring. Even if I don't want it, you could sell it. You could do something with it. Give it to your grandkid, whatever you want to do. I'm definitely accepting that ring.
Yeah, that was my answer too. Is you take the ring, and if you want to call yourself a champion, you can. It's up to you, but you
Right.
get the ring when it's offered to you.
Right.
A couple things about college sports in general. The whole world's gone through the transformation with COVID. We all had to adjust our lives, regardless of what field you're in. But 2021 is really the world changing of college sports. We've seen stuff like name, image, and likeness come into play, and then the transfer portal comes into play. You got guys. It's almost free agency in college athletics. We can see major conference realignment. But specifically with the name, image, and likeness, when you were such a star in the upstate and then you stay at home and go to Clemson, what are your thoughts on it going into a place, and how much would a guy like yourself benefited from that when you were playing college ball?
Well, I definitely would have benefited a good bit. I remember my college days. I was a struggling athlete. I was on scholarship, but I still, you struggle from here and there. I was too prideful, to ask my parents for money because I know, it wasn't easy for them. So I just, had to make other means work. But I'm actually happy for the athletes these days. You know, they get to make money off their image, which I think they should have, you know, been able to do a long time ago. I think with all these different, you know, avenues or different leagues and avenues that the players can go down these days, you know, besides college, I think they really put a damper on college, on universities, and they had no choice but to, you know, approve of this. But I'm definitely happy, and I'm definitely not bitter. You know, it's just, you know, times have changed. If you look back when I played in the NBA, you know, I made a lot more money than I was, you know, an average player. But if you look at, you know, 10 years before me, the average player, they made a lot less money than me. Even some of the above average players made a lot less money than I did. So, you know, it's just because of the times changed and, you know, money is growing. So I definitely understand it.
Yeah, and I think about, you obviously went on to have a successful pro career at the highest level of basketball. There are a lot of guys that don't have that on their resume, and I would imagine some of them are looking back and saying, "What if, when, and why not earlier?" So we'll see how
Right,
the whole thing
right.
plays out. I'm curious on my end how it'll impact locker rooms when you have the star of the team making so much money. Does that guy, the eighth guy off the bench, want to set that pick for him to free up a jump shot? We'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah,
Athletes
it'll
are
be interesting
athletes.
for sure.
Yeah, and everyone wants to win, so the goal is there. I'm sure folks will figure it out. I also wanted to get your take. I know that this is, maybe not the most timely topic, but last year was one of social and racial injustice at the forefront of certainly our country. We're starting to see some demonstrations in the Olympics again. But I remember talking to you soon after the death of George Floyd, when that it was really every major city across America. There were demonstrations going on, and we've seen a lot of progress since that time in terms of the NBA and outreach, and trying to encourage folks to vote and making sure that promos alerting the common fan to social injustice, racial injustice are really at the forefront of what they're doing. I'm curious how you feel about the league and their relationship to this movement a year later, and is there anything, and if so, what can be done moving forward?
Yeah, honestly, I think the NBA has done a great job of, you know, of their, you know, of being on the forefront of, you know, social injustice. I know they stand behind the players. It's not an easy task, you know, for a multi-billion-dollar, you know, business to do something like that. But you know, they listen to the players. They understand, you know, that it's something that needs to be done. Um, it's like I said, it's tough, you know, for the NBA, but you see a lot of leagues around you know the United States, even around the world, you know, follow suit just because you know the NBA they're one of the main companies and the players, you know, they're the main people that's speaking up, you know, for social justice. And you're seeing a lot of things change. They're not only speaking, but they're acting. You know, if you see you're seeing lot more African American head coaches being hired. You know, it's just a lot of things are coming to the light now that people can see. I guess because of social media and the content that's out there, everybody has a phone. So it's just great to see that movement, to see that progress. And I just hope, you know, everybody just keep moving forward and we don't have to have another tragic incident to happen before we, you know, make another big move. I just hope we can keep progressing.
And I think a lot of people see these stories and they see George Floyd, and then it's not in South Carolina. Well, this stuff doesn't happen in my neighborhood. You're from the upstate of South Carolina. Most of the folks watching this are in the Southeast or from the Carolinas. I'm curious if even Trevor Booker, with the name and career and the notoriety that you have, or I should say fame rather than notoriety, but you know, have you ever experienced anything like that, either in your time at Union or at Clemson, or have you seen it firsthand? I'm curious if you could personalize it a little bit for folks that may not have that experience.
Yeah, honestly, personally, I haven't, you know, experienced anything, you know, that deep. I've had cops pull me over, and you could tell that there was some racist there. That's honestly minor compared to what some people go through. And I think, one of the reasons that maybe I haven't had to go through anything is because I've always been on this big platform. Even growing up in high school, I had a pretty big name just from basketball. In college, same thing. And then, you get to the NBA and you drive, these fancy cars and things like that. So the cops are less likely to mess with you just because they know you have money. But it doesn't take away from the fact that, the people, that aren't as fortunate as me, that the cops don't know, or whoever may not know, that they don't get taken advantage of or treated wrongly, just because they don't have the amount of money or the platform or the image that I do. It's definitely a lot of unfair stories out here. I hear people talk about it all the time. I see it on the news, I read about it. And it's something, that I would like to change, myself. And I'm definitely, I call myself an activist. I could do more for sure. But, I'm definitely speaking up on everything that I see. And like I said, I just hope to continue to see change and progress.
And I think that's kind of where it starts is, acknowledge the problem, do what you can, but always acknowledge that you can do more. And I think if we all keep striving for that, then hopefully the world's a more peaceful place for everybody moving forward. So I certainly appreciate your thoughts and your candor there. But the show
and
is
one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
And one more thing, I think, a lot of progress, where a lot of progress could happen is, some laws. Some of the laws are very outdated and, go back, hundreds of years, centuries or decades. And some of them, were made so long ago that the United States was a very racist place. And a lot of those laws, hurt, the African American community, or just the minorities, period. And I think, that's something that we can't be afraid to change. Just because it's a law, it doesn't mean it can't be changed, to benefit everybody. So I think, whoever is listening, representative, Congress, Senate, whatever, just think about that.
Yeah, I think that's certainly an important point, and that's kind of where it starts. The U.S. is aiming to be a more perfect union. And I think founding fathers were pretty smart in wording it that way. Is we can always strive to be a little more closer to perfect. The show is called In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports. I want to walk through your career a little bit with you. It is quite the story. From Whitmire, South Carolina, played high school at Union County, named the Gatorade Player of the Year, and you could argue the best basketball player to ever play at Union. What was your recruitment like, being in a small town in South Carolina? And there are only a few big names at that point from South Carolina in terms of pro basketball. I was wondering, since you're not in a typical hotbed at that point in time, was recruitment lighter than you expected, lighter than it should have been? Walk us through that a little bit.
Well, it was tough for me to get recruited. I had two high major offers, and that was University of South Carolina and Clemson. Other than that, I had schools like Wofford, Winthrop, who else? James Madison, schools like that, knocking on the door. But, it was tough for me to get recruited. Just being a small town kid where I'm from, Union High School, nobody's going to come out there to the boonies to watch you. But thank goodness I played AAU basketball. Coach McNeely, Coach Steve McNeely from Greenville, he was my AAU coach. And, thank goodness he had, some money behind him, because we got to travel, and he put us on the stage, to be shown off to different college coaches. So we got to travel and play in big tournaments. And that's honestly how I got recognized by Clemson. It was actually a tournament in Houston. So thank goodness for that. But a lot of kids get overlooked just because, they're small town, but it's a lot of talent, in the Carolinas that goes unnoticed.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a minute, because I do think that is a prevailing theme that I've seen even in my decade here in the upstate. But as we continue on the path, you go to Clemson, and boy, pretty successful there. 4 straight years of at least 21 wins, 3 straight trips to the NCAA tournament as a senior, 15 points and 8.5 rebounds, your first team All ACC. If you were to encapsulate your entire time playing college ball, and there's one moment that you think back on all the time, and that'll make you smile, or it went the wrong way, and that's the one that you're harping on that you can't quite get past. What is that moment from your time playing in Tiger Town?
Yeah, I got 2 of them. One that went the wrong way and one that went the right way. The first one is when we beat Duke, when they were ranked 3rd in the country, I think. I think we were number 10, and they came to our place, and we beat them by like 27. And it was an ESPN game. I'll never forget that game, just how loud it was in Little John. Yeah, so I still think about that, to this day. And the thing that went wrong, it would have to be my senior speech on senior night, when the seniors give a speech at the end of the game and, thank the school and all of that. Mine was literally 5 seconds long. Everybody was hyped. I got the microphone. They were ready for me to give this great speech of like 1 to 2 minutes. And I had absolutely nothing to say. I just said, I think I said, keep rocking the John, and left it at that. Yeah, it was pretty terrible. And I still catch trouble.
How does that happen, man? That's a tradition every year. Did you know it was, would you just say like, I'm going to wing it? I got this. Don't worry about it. Then...
I honestly don't even remember it. It was just, I still catch trouble to this day about it though. Yeah, the crowd was like, they were stunned. They were like, that's it?
And look, if you're watching this and you were at that game, and this is a source for you, I'm sorry. It's just, that is a funny picture, with the microphone and then an entire arena just, that it?
Right.
Well, I like that. That's not what I was expecting. So you go in the NBA, drafted by Minnesota, traded right to Washington, 2010 to 2014 with the Wizards, 2014, 2016 with the Jazz, Brooklyn after that. Maybe your best year with the Nets there, 16 to 18. Then 18, you play with Philly and Indiana. Kind of hit a wall, and then you decide to retire in 2020. 532 games over 8 seasons. How would you describe the difference in level of play from a top conference like the ACC going to the NBA? You hear in the NFL from D1 college ball, it's the speed. It's always the speed. What are the big differences going from, an all ACC performer in the ACC, which many would consider the best basketball conference in the country, then going to the NBA and being the new guy?
Definitely speed. That's one of them. Speed, strength. The biggest thing is probably just the IQ, basketball IQ. Everybody in the NBA is basically, the first or second best player off of their college team or wherever they came from. So just imagine going against that every night, for 82 games. I know a lot of people, say this player sucks or that player sucks, but honestly, it's no bad NBA players. They might be worse than some other NBA players, but, there are no NBA player that sucks. So you have to bring it every night, and that's the tough part. It's a little different from college. You might play, no disrespect, but a Furman, which is not on the level of a Clemson, or or the Citadel or something like that. And you can have, you can rest a little bit more. But in the NBA, you got to bring it every night, not only because playing against the best players, but somebody is out there, trying to take your. So if you don't bring it, then the coach is going to go look down the line and and find somebody else that will.
Who's the guy that you modeled your game after, and who's the guy that you felt starstruck by when you got to the league?
Honestly, I didn't model my game after anybody. I just went out there and just played my butt off. That's the only thing I really knew how to do. Whatever came to me, I took it. I know a lot of people ask me that, but honestly, it's really nobody. I had favorite players like Kevin Garnett, Allen Iverson, Kobe, but I really never modeled my game after anybody.
And then who are you starstruck by? Who was the guy that when you showed up to the league, either in year one, year two, and you finally got on the floor with this guy, or you met him before a game, that you're just like, wow, anyone that watches basketball as a kid has that guy, man. Don't big time me here. I want to know who the guy that Trevor Booker was, a 5-year-old again, meeting him for the first time.
Yeah, no big time. It's honestly nobody. I wasn't starstruck. I think the only time I was ever starstruck is when I met Kevin Garnett when I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. And, I was scared to ask him for an autograph. But once I got on the court, in the NBA, I felt like I belonged. So I really wasn't starstruck. Yeah.
That's the difference between a guy that wanted to play sports and is now talking about sports, and a guy that played sports at the highest level right there. All right, I got more basketball questions for you. Favorite teammate, hardest guy you ever had to guard, and the third one, the guy that you played with or against that you think doesn't get their due for being as good of a player as they were. Again, favorite teammate, hardest guy you had to guard, and the one that you think doesn't get their just due.
Favorite teammate, that's a tough one. Thinking back to my Wizards days, my Utah days, I would have to say maybe Rudy Gobert. Maybe, he's a good friend of mine. We still keep in touch. He's a great guy. I could go, down the line, honestly, Joe Ingles. I had a lot of great teammates. So it's hard to pick one.
For the record, I'm stunned that you didn't name a point guard that fed you the ball more. I feel like that's the easy answer for a post player. Just, I like you the best if you keep giving me the ball.
Yeah, I wasn't one of those players where they fed the post, so I can't say that. I had to go get the rebounds. So maybe that's why I didn't say the point guard.
Hardest guy you ever had to guard?
It's probably between Carmelo Anthony and Dirk Nowitzki. I remember guarding Dirk, and I guarded him, had great defense. Every time I had a hand in his face, like almost touching his nose, but he was still like hit it all net. He's 6'10", 6'11", just shoot right over me. And, I honestly didn't feel bad about it because he did it to everybody. With Carmelo, I remember one game, playing at the Garden. I was guarding him the first half, and, he had an all first half. So, I started talking junk in the locker room, like I got this joint on lock. And, came out the second half. Whew, he lit me up. It's just, once he get going, it's tough to stop him.
And Dirk was unfair because he was so tall, and that ball would have such a high arc. I mean, it was literally impossible to block. The guy you played with or against that you don't think gets their just due?
That's a tough one too. I honestly think Chris Middleton is still so underrated, just because he's so quiet. And he's not flashy, but if you look at the things that he does for the team, he brings a lot of intangibles with the tangibles. He can score it, he can defend, he can score it at all three levels. He's just quiet, and I think they just don't notice him just because he's quiet. But honestly, I think he's with Giannis, for the best player on the team. Giannis is definitely number one, but I don't think Chris is too far behind.
Yeah, and I think if you paid attention to the playoffs and their run, that each series there was a game where Chris Middleton put the team on his back and really carried them to a victory. So I don't think that's a stretch by any stretch, for lack of a better word. But that kind of bridges into my next question. Some big names from the Palmetto State in the pro basketball world. You think about Alex English. You mentioned Kevin Garnett a couple of times yourself. Now we're seeing this influx of young talent like Zion Williamson and Ja Morant, guys coming out this year with A.J. Lawson from USC, Amir Sims from Clemson. They're hoping to join them in the league. But you mentioned Kevin Garnett's the one guy that you were all struck by as a kid. I would imagine some of that has to do with both you guys having South Carolina ties. Do you feel a sense of pride when you see guys from South Carolina not just making waves in the NBA, but becoming national storylines?
Oh yeah, definitely. I take pride in that, and it brings a smile to my face just because I know, how much harder they had to work, to get noticed and to get on that level. So it definitely brings a smile to my face, and I'm sure they feel the same way when they see somebody else from the Carolinas make it. No matter what sport it is. If you're from the Carolinas, especially South Carolina, and you get on that stage, it's a great feeling, and to see somebody else make it, it's a even greater feeling.
How much easier is it, just from your perspective, to say Zion Williamson? And obviously, we're talking about two different ball players, two different skill sets, and when you can dunk like that, that's what every basketball fan wants to see are those highlights. But there was no social media when you were getting recruited. And as you mentioned, Union County is not exactly a tourist hotbed for basketball scouts. So when you have everyone in the stands having Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and they're putting all this stuff up every time there's a big time play, it seems like there's always a camera rolling on you at this point. How much of a leg up does that give the better players, regardless of where they are in the country, in recruiting compared to when your generation was getting recruited?
Yeah, honestly, a big leg up, like I said, but today it's all about, social media and having, that content and somebody, filming you. That's just how it is these days. Of course, I wish I would have had that back in the day. It would have made it a lot easier. But of course, the people, 10, 15 years before me, wish that they had some of the same things that I had. So I really don't harp on it, but they definitely, it definitely makes it a lot easier, for kids to get noticed these days.
I don't know how often you're able to keep up with the Tigers, but we'll get your thoughts on the current state of the program. Brad Brownell took it back to the tournament last year. And, obviously every college team had a bunch of speed bumps, and a lot of it had to do with COVID. A lot of turnover on the roster this year. Guys like Alamir Dawes, Nick Honor, Hunter Tyson, Alex Hemingway, PJ Hall, a Dorman kid, all coming back to the Tigers. And then, with Brad Brownell's system really starting to go into place now, where defense shoot the ball, it's always tough to win the ACC, but they showed that there was a method where they could do that last year. Your thoughts on the state of the program, and what does Clemson need to do to get over that hump and make it back to the Sweet 16 and even further?
Yeah, I just want to see the program, keep progressing, bring in, let's try to get those high level recruits. I really like, PJ Hall. I think he has a bright future. I think he's really going to help the team out next year. So that was a big pickup for Coach Brownell and the staff. So they definitely did a great job with that. Coach Brownell, he's done a great job of putting a great system in, where players, they trust him and they're buying into, what he's teaching them. And that's the first step, and getting the program going the right way. And I think he's established that. So I'm definitely excited, for next season.
I don't want to make it seem like you've been retired for a long time, because you haven't. But, even when you were playing, you always found time to hold basketball camps here in the upstate. And, what I've noticed is that it's not just basketball. You're trying to teach these kids how to be better people using lessons through the game of basketball. Why was that always so important to you? And what is the message you hope that each one of these campers or participants takes home with them after they leave you each summer?
I just think it's just so important, at a young age, you're so, what's the word I'm looking for? You can be, easily persuaded, especially at a young age. So I think it's, what's that?
Influenced.
Influence. That's what I was looking for. You're heavily influenced as a kid. So, I'm on a platform, like I said, where the kids, they look at me in awe. So, I want to make sure that I give them my thoughts and the things I want to give them my experience. So I want them to know that it's bigger than sports. Sports it's gonna be a small part of your life. Even if you do get lucky and make it to the NBA, what are you gonna do after? You're only gonna be playing, on average, it's probably like 4 years in the NBA. So, you're gonna have a whole bunch of life to live after that. And, even if you don't make it to the NBA and that was your goal, your dream, it's not the end of the world. I mean, a lot of people don't make it, playing professional sports. But you got to have a backup option. And if you love sports so much, you still can stay in that field. Just doing something else, coaching, you can go be a GM, you could be a mascot, whatever you want to be, but you need to have, a backup plan, and it's always bigger than the sport.
It's one of the cooler things I get to cover every year with you, and just literally see the smiles on their faces when maybe I'm getting soft because I'm a father now, but when you walk into the room and all those kids lose their minds, it's pretty cool to see each and every time.
Yeah. And another thing that I love about my camps that I brought up during the end of my camp on the last day while all the parents were in the room waiting for the kids. I told the parents that I love the diversity in the room. You saw, Black, white, even, Asian, Hispanic, everybody in one room, having fun and learning and having conversations, even the parents, while they were sitting over there, they were interacting with each other. And I was telling them that I would love, that's the main reason I love having my camps. I just see the diversity and people coming together and having conversations. And I think we need more of that, outside of camps. So I'm trying to, process my brain on how I could, make things like that in the community happen. Because usually, if you have, functions in the community, it's usually, it might be a all Black crowd, or, if it's something else, it might be an all white crowd. It's tough to get, that mixture, especially where they're having a good time and having conversations with each other. And I think, that'll, help the world keep progressing as well.
Yeah, I think the more we interact, the more you learn about each other, and the more you realize that more or less we're all kind of the same, just from different backgrounds with different interests.
Exactly.
As we get set to wrap up here, it's been a very long journey to get to this point. A big man with a big name from a small town who made it to the highest level of professional basketball. And as you mentioned, the average NBA career, 4 years, you played 8. And you did a lot of different things. There were times they asked you to score, defend, rebound, or, bang with a center down low, whatever it was. You did it better than the vast majority of basketball players playing. But when you look at your entire story, what do you want Trevor Booker's legacy as a basketball player to be?
Probably a super competitor on the court. That played with a lot of grit, a lot of heart, a lot of hustle. He's very passionate about the game. And a lot of people see me on the court. They may think I'm crazy because of how passionate I am about it. But then they meet me off the court, and I'm totally different. I could be such a hot hit on the court just because I love the game and I'm so into it. But off the court, I love everybody, and everybody, they realize that off the court. So it's definitely a big difference on and off the court. But I love the game.
There might be somebody out there watching this right now, a basketball player, teenager in the upstate of South Carolina. The fact that you grew up in Whitmire and made it to the NBA, I think is a pretty cool inspiration for a kid like that. If you had someone like that watching right now, what would you say to them?
It's definitely possible. It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's honestly going to take, some luck. That happened in my shoes. I'm not going to say, that I didn't deserve it. I definitely did, but I'm not going to sit up here and say that somebody else didn't deserve it over me. I was in the right place at the right time, but I was also prepared for that moment because I worked my butt off. So keep working and just follow your dreams.
And if there is that young man or lady watching this, and you do follow Trevor's footsteps, make sure you prepare something for your senior speech in a packed gym at a basketball arena. That's a good lesson to learn. Trevor, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man. I appreciate you taking some time with us for this week's edition of In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports. Certainly hope to catch up with you again next year around basketball season.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Trevor Booker, everybody, the Clemson Tigers legend, officially done with the NBA, but still hooping. Certainly appreciate his time and appreciate you joining us this week as well. Have another great episode for you next week. Have a great one, everybody.